So my name is Christopher Collins, and I want to welcome you to the 2024 Columbia University School of Professional Studies American Language Program Winter Conference. Thanks for coming out, and this year's event will be our 10th conference, so that's great. If I'm not mistaken, this is the first winter conference where there's actual winter weather in the form of snow. That's how it goes. So each year we've had a different theme and have had a plenary presentation followed by shorter presentations pertaining to that theme. Last year, Maria McCormick spoke to us about assessment. The year before that, we held our conference remotely, and Scott Thornbury joined us from Barcelona to speak about the teaching and learning of grammar. And in previous years, we've had a number of other great plenary presentations on a variety of other themes, such as professional development, curriculum, vocabulary acquisition. I do wish to point out that the videos of those plenary presentations are all available to watch online if you are interested. So this year's theme is language learning and technology, innovations, implications. Ongoing developments in technologies such as artificial intelligence have not only transformed how we teach and learn, but also have challenged us to reimagine the possibilities of language education. Before we begin, I'd like to thank all of our presenters who are here to share their expertise and insights. Equally, the Columbia University School of Professional Studies events management team have meticulously arranged and prepared this event, so I want to thank them in advance for what I trust will be a seamlessly run event. Thank you. And now, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Brittany Ober, who will introduce this year's plenary speaker. Thanks.
Thank you, Christopher, and welcome everyone on a lovely Saturday morning. So it's my pleasure to introduce our plenary speaker today, Larissa Goulart. Larissa has been engaged in the field of linguistics since her early teaching days in Brazil and at the Northern Arizona University, where she taught English writing classes. Her expertise extends to corpus linguistics, characteristics, I skipped a line here, particularly in analyzing the linguistic characteristics of undergraduate student writing. Her research interests focus on the practical applications of corpus linguistics in educational settings, offering new insights into language learning and teaching. Her departmental work includes leveraging corpus linguistic tools for pedagogical material development, providing a bridge between linguistic research and classroom application. Also active in the academic community, Goulart brings a unique perspective to the field of linguistics, aiming to empower teachers and improve language education through data-driven approaches. So if you would join me in welcoming Larissa, and we'll get started. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh yeah, I'm mic'd, right? So can you all hear me? Is my mic on? Yeah. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, everybody, for being here in this snowy morning. To be honest, when I looked out the window and I thought, oh my God, it's a perfect day of snow, I thought, I have to leave my bed, So thank you all for being here. Thanks for the invitation, Christopher and Brittany. I'm really excited to talk to you all. And I'm going to start from the middle of my presentation, actually. It's going to be a bit of a twist and turn here. So as you can see, my title is Analyzing Language Data Empowering Teachers. This is what I call my catchy title for YouTube later. What I'm doing is talking about corpus linguistics and how we can use corpus linguistics to develop pedagogical materials. Let's see. So as I said, I'm starting from the middle. So let's think here. We're all teachers. Let's think about this. We get this bit of this excerpt from a student essay, and it says, in this article, Pring Millhill highlights the tasty irony of the book's ending. Do y'all agree that tasty irony, it's a bit, right? It has, So how would you give feedback to this type of writing? What would you do if this was an essay that your student submitted to your writing class? Yeah, go ahead.
I'd probably say that it's more common to say delicious irony than tasty irony.
So we'll probably have something like this, right? The option is delicious. But a different alternative of what we could do is to actually tell the students, look, these are the words that most frequently combine with delicious, and these are the words that most frequently combine with tasty. What do you notice, right? And I'll try this with you, because we can see here, do I have a, oh yeah, we do. we can see here actually that delicious combines a lot of like food, meal, recipe, meals, apple, dinner. Same thing with tasty. Tasty, food, treats, treat, meal, recipes, right? So we do have they're both synonyms when we're talking about food. What do you notice is the difference here in delicious, if you have very good vision? We have irony in delicious, and we don't have that in tasty. So in that case, I'm giving the student the agency, right? They can choose, do they want to use delicious or tasty? Looking at the frequency. Because I also don't want to just tell students, hey, don't say tasty. Maybe I'm killing the next Shakespeare, just because that's their second language. Now, another example here is very common in academic writing, like Gunther quoted that if a child's behavior are construed as being negative, it is unlikely that the child will be seen as gifted. So again, we have two different ways that we could give feedback here, right? I could just highlight and say this is the wrong verb, or I could try and find alternative verbs that will go in this context. And for this, I'm looking at the frequency of different verbs that will have parentheses, verb, and that, because this is the type of verb that I will find in quotations like this. So I have here found that, suggested that, stated that, showed that, argued that, concluded that, and reported that. These are all maybe like found that is not the best option here. But again, I'm showing students different alternatives of verbs that they can use in academic writing. Let's see how I'm doing. So both of these examples with delicious and tasty and with the different verbs here are all examples of how I could bring corpus linguistics in the classroom. And how can corpus linguistics be used in the classroom? Well, we can use to highlight issues in students' own work, like what I did with delicious and tasty, right? It can also be used to suggest alternative language, like, for example, with quoted that, I'm giving a lot of different verbs that also occur in that context. Or I can illustrate typical uses of language. And this is what I was saying about like not killing the next Shakespeare of English, Because maybe I want to tell the students that, yeah, tasty irony is not common. But the student wants to cause like some effect. This is a bit of like a creative writing for students. So I'm giving them the options here. So I'm illustrating what the typical use of language is, and they can decide whether they want to use what's typical or if they want to break the norms to shock people. So my goal today is to convince you to join the corpus revolution so that you also, use a bit of corpus in your classroom. So we want you to join the revolution. Okay, but I said, I throw around the word corpus a lot. But what is a corpus? Okay, my students here are tired of hearing this. So corpus linguistics a corpus is a large principled collection of natural texts. What does it mean to be a principled collection? It means that if I set out to collect a specific genre, register, or let's say, here my example is I'm teaching my students how to write fan fiction of the Chronicles of Narnia. So I want them to simulate the type of language that the author would use, right? So I can collect a corpus of the Chronicles of Narnia. Well, let's say they want to use a word that doesn't appear here, that the frequency is not high enough in this book. Can I include The Lord of the Rings? No, because that's not principled. If I said that I'm doing the Chronicles of Narnia, that's it. Now, maybe if I was collecting a text that is young adult novels, then yes. But I have to have criteria. This is basically the rule. Then there's a couple more things that we need to know. So a corpus is representative of a specific discourse variety. So this could be a genre or a register. So let's say I'm looking at young adult fiction. I'm compiling only texts, I'm collecting only texts that represent young adult fiction. And a corpus has to be stored on a computer to allow for both qualitative and quantitative analysis. So maybe some of you here do have a box with The Lord of the Rings in your libraries, or a box with all the Chronicles of Narnia in your libraries. That doesn't count as a corpus, because what we're trying to leverage here is the use of computers and computing power to understand language patterns. So this is a corpus. And you might have seen some corpora around, and now I want you to raise your hand. Who here have seen coca before? Yeah, the three of you here, definitely. Who here has seen Bowie before? This is the British Academic Written English Corpus. So this is a corpus of undergraduate student writing. Okay, I'm glad that the hands are not only those. There's more people. British National Corpus. Okay, so I'll say a little bit more about this corpus. And then there's also my case, the Michigan Corpus of Academic Spoken English. So imagine all different lectures that go around the university being recorded and transcribed. I have a fun fact about this corpus. There is a lecture that happens in a boat. Students go fishing, and there is a recording of that lecture here. So, you can go scavenger hunting for that. So only one person has worked with my case here, apparently. Okay, 3, 4. Okay, so you know a bit about corpus already. And here I have all of my examples together. So you know a lot. There's a couple of things, or let's say terms, that you need to know before I can go on with my lecture here, okay? So a corpus can be a collection of spoke, written text, or both, right? So I can have spoken corpora, like the British Academic Spoken English Corpus, which again is like lots of different lectures, or the corpus of American soap operas. You could also have a corpus of just, the Kardashians' transcripts. This would all be spoken. You can also have corpora that it's only written, like a corpus of all Wikipedia articles, a corpus of everything that ChatGPT outputs, for example, that's all written. And you have some corpora that are both, like the Coca corpus represents both spoken and written because it has soap operas at the same time that it has Wikipedia, so it has all of them together. And the British National Corpus also represents both, has a bunch of things. The other difference that we need to know is the difference between general corpora and specialized corpora. As you might have guessed, all these corpora that have spoken and written text, they are general. They're trying to represent all of the English language or all of any language, right? So they're kind of like the whole ocean of a language, while specialized corpora are just a drop in the ocean. So they're trying to represent just one very, very specific area. This would be useful for what? English for specific purposes teaching, right? So let's say you're teaching students who are really interested in join the Supreme Court. You have the corpus of US Supreme Court opinions. Or you have the British Academic Written English Corpus if you're thinking about undergraduate writing. There's a lot of different corpora that contains texts that are very, very specific. Like, for example, if I had a corpus of all the Kardashians' transcripts, that would be very specific language, right? I hope we all agree. Yeah. Now, what can we do with corpus linguistics? I mean, obviously, the first thing that most people think about is linguistics research. And now you are going to do a bit of linguistics research. So just to see if you're still awake, I know it's early, you just had breakfast. So what are the most frequent verbs of academic writing? Yeah, I'll take, some guesses here. Claim. Mm-hmm. Show, propose. State, demonstrate. So far, no one's right. Research. Are you all ready to see the answer? Because this is just, yeah. So actually, the most frequent verb in English, in academic English, is use. Then make, see, provide, and find. And we can think about this, right? Because we can say, let's say, Christopher used this method in his paper, and I'm going to reproduce that. Or in this essay, I will use Socrates' theory of something. So that's why we have use. Also make. We can also think of see as like in this picture or as can be seen, things like that. So that's why we have these verbs as the most frequent ones. We usually think about the verbs that we use to communicate, right? Okay, but this is not the end of our linguistics research today. Does it vary by discipline? Do you think that, for example, use will be more frequent in history or math, education, science? Any guesses? Science? Use will be more frequent in science. Is that it? Do we have another guess? Social sciences, education. You know what? You're going to see that you're not that wrong, all of you. So it is very frequent. You can see here. I don't think I can highlight there, but you can see there education, very frequent. Then science and technology and medicine. But it's not that frequent in philosophy and religion, humanities, and law. Okay, so for somebody like me, I say this to a lot of people. Selena Gomez has this song that says, "The heart wants what it wants." Yeah, so this is me. And for the past maybe 14 years, my heart wants to study undergraduate student writing. So for somebody like me who really likes undergraduate student writing, for me it's very important how language varies across discipline, right? So this is like a little bit of my research. And this is how corpus started to be used in research to describe language patterns. But you definitely can see how this could be used for teaching, right? Because if I'm teaching a writing class that combines lots of students from different disciplines, I could highlight to them how this verb specifically is used across these different disciplines. So students will be more aware of language variation. You are not the only one thinking about this. Researchers like in the 90s, end of the 80s, who were really focused on doing linguistic description also realized that this could be used for teaching. So let's go a little bit down into memory lane. So what's the other thing that we can do with corpora? Of course, language teaching. And if you took a class with me, you might have seen this before. Here's an example of like how I use corpus for teaching. So here I'm asking students to identify what is the grammatical pattern for when we use s to indicate possession and when we use of. So I have lots of different concordance lines here, and they have to look at the examples and try to identify the rule. Dara already seen this exercise. She took this class. So here is one example of how I use it. But maybe you're not like totally convinced that corpus is a cool thing to use in your teaching. And this is what I'm going to try and do. So we need to know this will be a bit of a vocabulary lesson too. So the use of corpus in the classroom was first proposed, or let's say the father of the idea is Tim Johns, who published this paper in 1990 and 1991. He has a series of publications talking about the applications of data-driven learning. But what is data-driven learning? So data-driven learning is an educational approach where decisions about the learning process are made based on data analysis. So we're trying to identify what actually happens in the language and then use that for teaching. In this context, data typically refers to information collected like from various sources, usually meaning corpora of the target language. So that's how we have a different name for when we talk about corpus in the classroom. We call that data-driven learning. In the 90s, linguists and lexicographers started to like reflect how corpus linguistics would revolutionize language teaching. So this is the first paper, like the corpus revolution in 1992. How do you think they said that like corpus linguistics was going to revolutionize language teaching? You are allowed if you remember. So they were really thinking about creating dictionaries and concordance lines as examples in the dictionaries. This is how they thought that computer tools would actually help in language teaching. Now think about ChatGPT, people. Well, in 2008, they already realized that they were kind of wrong, that like they dreamed too small. This is basically what we're thinking here, right? Because they were only thinking about the applications of these tools to creating like dictionaries and things like that, but like still paper dictionaries. The most revolutionary idea that they had is to put like dictionaries into CD-ROMs so that students could click on a word and see lots of examples of that. We can do way more than that nowadays. Okay, so why should we include data-driven learning in language teaching? I'm going to start with science. Okay, but if science doesn't work, if you're not a science believer, I have other arguments too. So first with science, there's like 64, so in this paper, Boulton and Cobb review 64 studies on the applications of data-driven learning. So these are people who actually like applied corpus into their teaching in their English classroom. And do you all know what a meta-analysis is? I think that like after COVID, a lot of people learned what a meta-analysis is. It's when we try to aggregate the results of several different studies, right? What they found out is that actually for most of these classrooms, so we have at least like 64 classrooms, they see a lot of like language gain from using DDL in the classroom. This could be tested from like a pre-test and a post-test, or having a group that is not doing DDL, data-driven learning, and having a group that is doing data-driven learning. So, okay, this was my science bit. But I have other arguments too. If you don't think that like aggregating the results of research is clear enough, have some other reasons why you might consider adding data-driven learning to your classroom. First, it really presents like authentic data, right? We're trying to represent the language that students will encounter in their daily lives. So we get examples of language as is used by actual speakers of the language. You also get an abundance of examples of real patterns. I don't know if this happens to you, but it happens to me a lot when students ask me something like, oh, how do you use the word notwithstanding in a sentence? And I have to be like thinking, I'll think for like 10 minutes to think of one sentence, but that's not good enough because they're going to ask me for another sentence. Well, if I had a corpus at hand, and I'll show you some examples of online corpora that you can use, I can just search for the word notwithstanding and probably get like 100 of examples and give that to the students. It's also useful to identify language patterns rather than rules. So this is good. I was a very, like, how do I say this, rebellious language learner. I hated when my teachers would say, don't end a sentence with a preposition. Don't start a sentence with and or but, you know, this type of things. So if you show me like language pattern, I can make informed decisions and you don't have to give me a rule, right? It also helps learners understand conventions of specific discourse communities. Like if they're trying to learn for different disciplines, we can show them like in your discipline, in business, this is how people write. In your discipline in history, this is how people write. This doesn't apply only to academic writing. There is research showing that this also applies to elementary school writing, where students have to write for history in a different way that they have to write for the other disciplines. Let's see. Okay, it draws on exploratory learning, so students are at the center. So rather than the teacher giving the rule, the teacher is way more the guide, right? It develops students' autonomy as language learners. So I've been in the US for a long time. I did my master's in the UK, so I also lived in England. So I'm a proficient speaker of English. I think we all agree, since you're understanding me, yeah? But I still have language questions. Even when I was developing these slides, I specifically struggle with prepositions. So I still go to the corpus to check, because I don't have a teacher at all times. Even for those of you who are native speakers, I'm sure you have language questions sometimes. So I don't have a teacher at all times in my pockets, and sometimes, to be honest, I'll be embarrassed to ask the questions I have to other people. I can always check on COCA or in a corpus to see what's most frequent and what's commonly used. So I'm an independent learner now. It also connects research to ESL teaching. So there is a lot of research in corpus that could inform the selection of lexicogrammatical features. What do I mean by this? Remember my list of the most frequent academic verbs? So let's say I have a student who is proficient in English, but maybe is just starting to learn academic English. I would start with the most frequent verbs of academic English. But if I have a student who is very proficient in academic writing, maybe they're already doing their PhDs, I would start with the least frequent, right? Because they probably didn't see those verbs yet. So I have here, like, using research to inform the selection of, or the order of the things that I'm going to teach. It also informs the appropriateness of language use in relation to register. Is this more formal, less formal? Is this commonly used in spoken text, in written text, and so on? But everything that I said here is all positive. And I don't want you to think that this is perfect, you know, a walk down Central Park, something like that. No. There'll be challenges of implementing DDL in the classroom. And these are actually the challenges that I want to address today. I'm not going to say debunk, I'm actually going to say I'll give you the tools to think about those challenges, okay? So there's several challenges, but I selected specifically the ones mentioned in both of these papers. So this is Angela Chambers thinking about how we can bridge the gap between research in DDL and teachers actually putting them into practice. And this is Marcus Kelly's thinking about integrating corpus literacy into language teacher education. Some of the challenges they mentioned is that teachers don't have corpus training. So for those of you who are here, who had to take like a corpus class, even if it was just one class inside a bigger course? Okay, so yeah, the three of you definitely. I'm always looking at my students like, for sure. So you can see how just, I think, 6 of you had to take at least a corpus class, and 3 of you are my students, so, you know. It's not common in teacher training. Teachers don't know about the availability of useful corpus tools. Sometimes, even if you have some corpus training, you usually learn about like collecting your own corpus, you know, downloading files and then downloading programs. But there are things that were created by researchers that allegedly will make it easier for you to integrate corpus into your classroom. And corpus analysis is a complex and time-consuming task. This is true because corpus analysis requires a little bit of like research of the teacher, on the part of the teacher. You have to spend some time thinking about what the patterns say and what students might find. So this is my 3 challenges. And as I said, we're not going to debunk, but I'm going to try to, build so that these are not challenges for all of us here anymore. So teachers don't have corpus training. Guess what we're going to do now? Corpus training. So we're going to learn Corpus 101, corpus terminology. There's a couple of words that we need to learn before we get to the meat of the words that we actually need to know. Did that make sense? I hope so. So a corpus, the important thing, if you meet me on the street like 5 months from now, please don't tell me that a corpus is a website, okay? This is the important thing. A corpus is not a website. So a corpus is a collection of texts. So for example, I'm a Swiftie, so let's say if I download all of Taylor Swift lyrics, then I can analyze that and that will become a corpus. So it can be stored on my computer, it doesn't have to be online, but lots of different corpora are online. A concordancer is a tool that you use to analyze a corpus. So let's say I want to find out what are the most frequent words, how many times Taylor Swift uses love in her lyrics, I can search for that and now find how many times she uses the word love. And this will be my concordancer. The thing that I'm searching is my concordancer. This can be online, and I'm only going to talk about online things here today. But there is an option where you can download software that will do this for you, like Nconx, Wordsmith tools, and others. But this would mean actually downloading and installing things on your computer. I know I'm giving a lot of different websites here, but at the end there will be a Padlet with all the websites that I'm mentioning. Search terms and keywords is the word or phrase that you are searching in your concordancer. So going back to my Taylor Swift example, my search term would be love, right? Or if I want to search house of, that's my search term. So whatever I'm inputting, that's my search term. So these were the easy words. Now the real important words. Now this is a vocabulary class. We're going to learn 4 new words today. Concordance lines, keyword and context, collocations, and word lists. From the beginning, concordance lines. In the past, long time ago, medieval monks created like concordances of the Bible with which word, including the article the, a, and an, shown in its context. So I'm not very well versed in the Bible, but I imagine something like, in the beginning God created, every time. So I have the centralized word in the middle, and I can identify patterns of what word comes after, what words comes next. Imagine lots of flashcards with the words in the Bible. So corpus linguists, obviously, we don't write down every use of a word. Rather, we use corpus tools, right, to find all the instances of a word in a given corpus. This is what we call a concordance line. So as you can see here, this is a concordance line of English teaching. So I'm searching for English teaching on COCA, and I have a bunch of different sentences. I know the slide is a bit weird here, but here is English teaching, English teaching, English teaching, and the rest here is the context of the sentence. Yeah, you need to have special glasses to read my lines here. But here on my computer, it looks nice, so I can read it to you. So how I get to a concordance line? So if we're all familiar with the Corpus of Contemporary American English, also known as COCA, this is the interface. This is what you get when you enter there. So I can search for anything. Here I'm searching for English teaching, and then it will appear something like this. So it's English teaching plus the frequency. It's just one line. And if I click there, then I get all the lines of examples. So remember my example with students, like if they want to know examples of notwithstanding, this is what I could do. I could just search notwithstanding on COCA. This is what I'll get. Okay, but you might be thinking, Larissa, you promised that you're going to talk about teaching. And so far you just gave me, how to use COCA. Yeah, so this is how we're going to learn words. I'm going to show you a word, and I'm going to give you an example of how that could be used, this tool or functionality on COCA could be used for teaching. So here is how can I use concordance lines in my teaching. So imagine that, again, these are excerpts from student writing. You don't have to imagine. These are real excerpts from student writing. And you can read, right? So I'll give you, no, I'm just looking to see, not that you can read. I know you all can read. I'm just checking to see if you can see the sentences. Okay, do you notice anything about the use of nonetheless in the sentences? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can see that there is no punctuation around them. They're kind of distracting here. So the way that I would do this with the students, and maybe because my slide is not the best one here, there, it won't work perfectly, but I'll tell you how this will go. So take a look at, I would ask students to take a look at how nonetheless is used in these sentences here. And I could either print the sentences for the students or have them go to the corpus, write and search. And what we can see is actually that there is punctuation and then a comma after nevertheless in most of the examples in COCA. Then I would ask them where in the sentence does nonetheless appear, which type of punctuation occurred to the right and to the left of nonetheless, and I would hope for them to understand the rules. So the difference between this and a traditional material or traditional textbooks material is that the textbook will probably have an explanation of the use of linking adverbials and then exercises. What I'm proposing here is that we have questions about the use of the pattern that I'm trying students to identify. This could be about nonetheless or other linking adverbials. And then we could have the same type of exercises, but rather than giving the rule, we're asking students to understand the rule. So the goal of this activity is for students to notice how linking adverbials can be used in a sentence. And again, we could replicate this with other things like therefore, however. This activity also helps students edit their own text because I want them to be aware of how they can answer their own questions. So we learned the first word, right? Let's go to the next one. So keyword in context. So a keyword in context is very similar to a concordance line. It displays the only difference is that it displays your search term in the center with the other ones alphabetically organized. And in COCA, you also get to color code, and colors mean part of speech. So blue means noun, purple means verb, yellow means preposition. One way that I've used keyword in context in my class, and this is how you get there actually. You click on the interface, it has a quick button, you search for a word, and then it takes you to the same screen I had before. Okay, again, how can I use this for teaching? So let's say a student has a question about which preposition comes after the word difference. This is just one example. It could be like, which preposition comes after this verb or the other verb? So I would search, so student has this question that is, there are many differences between essays and literature reviews, or there are many differences from essays and literature reviews. It might be clear to us that we want between, right? But maybe the student will have other examples with from that work or like with other words. So here's what we could do. Oh, this is when I play my video. Let's see if it's gonna work. So I would ask students, and in this case, different from the previous exercise, I would have students to go into the website. So they would have to have computers or phones, something like that. I would ask students to use the quick function on COCA and search for the word difference, and then analyze which preposition occurs most frequently after the word difference. Because I could not have you going to COCA right now, I'll show you a video. I want you to notice something. So this here is between, okay? Try to see if you can spot from in my video. Did you see an example of from? 54, I can see clearly here. That's actually do. 55, also do. Then we have exist, then do, then but. So as you might have noticed, go ahead, Katie. You think there's a from?
Yeah, 60 through 62.
Yeah, you're actually right. 60 through 62. There's from, but you can see there's 3 examples of from and lots more of examples with between, right? Like I scrolled a long time until I left the between area. So this can help highlight to students which word combines most frequently with differences. And we can also analyze the word from here. It's not used in the sentence in the sense of comparison, like differences from something. So we could explore the quicks even further. Let's see if I can pass the slide. Okay, so this is one example of how to use keyword in context. Now we're going to get to what I find the most fun of all the options, collocations. So collocations, or collocate, means located together. These are 2 or more words that occur more frequently together than would be expected by chance. Like, for example, here. Can you tell which word comes after this? Like black, hot, instant, good, ice, local, free, strong, fresh? Coffee. Wow, very, yeah. But I am not a coffee girl. So what word combines with this? Exactly, tea. So we have ice, green, hot, herbal. So you can see how collocations can tell us a lot about patterns of language, right? And about the word meaning. So for example, we know that advanced speakers of English or native speakers of English use strong to describe coffee rather than robust or powerful, even though they kind of have the same meaning, right? So for native speakers or for people who've been in the US or in an English-speaking country for a long time, they've probably been exposed to this pattern this combination of words way more frequently than somebody that just started speaking English and might not understand why can we not say robust coffee or powerful coffee? So it's a way to show, so we can use frequency to show what's most common. Now the other thing that we can do is talk about how language changes. So the word gay meant something different in the 50s from what it means nowadays. Or, it kept both meanings, but it definitely had a different combination in the 50s than nowadays. Okay, this is a test for you again. Which one is the 50s, which one is now? So 50s, yeah. So gay colors, gay evening, gay party, gay time, gay voice. But nowadays we have gay marriage, gay men, gay rights, gay people, gay men. So I did exactly the same search, but here I was using just text from the 50s. And here I was using just text from 2010. So you can see how I can use COCA to show differences in collocation, in meaning of the word. So how can I use it for teaching? If you're teaching academic writing or university writing, you will feel this pain in your heart too. One of the problems that I encounter is that students sometimes repeat a lot of the same adjective to describe the noun study, research, investigation. The one that really gives me things is interesting, in this interesting study, or Goulart conducted an interesting study. I don't know why, but they're attached to it. So one thing that we could do is to search for the collocate of study. So we could do this on COCA, just like the other one that I showed before, or we could do this in just the word, and I'll show you how just the word is different. Because just the word gives me the collocates according to part of speech. So you can see there it has adjective plus study, the one that's a little bit in purple. So if I click on that one, I'll get results like this. So it has, I'm going to read here because in my screen it's clearer than there. So I have careful study, close study, comprehensive study, descriptive study, detailed study, extensive study, academic study, cultural study, experimental study, preliminary study, advanced study. So there's a bunch of different options here. And I would ask students to take a look at what adjectives are being used to describe study in just a word. I can also ask students to try the same search with other nouns like research, investigation, and actually explain how these words are used in academic English. One activity that I find that it's very helpful if you're using corpus in your classroom is to ask students to have a little notebook where they write their own rules that they came up with while analyzing. So in the first two questions, I'm trying to illustrate other adjectives that can be used to describe a study. But in this here, they're all A. So in C and D, I'm trying to demonstrate how the same procedure can be replicated with other words. I could also use corpus to get these lines so these are some lines from the British National Corpus, and they all say fascinating study. And I want students to read them and try to see if any of the synonyms that they learn would work here. So one student once asked me, well, but can't they do the same thing with thesaurus? And of course they can. But sometimes with thesaurus, you don't get exactly the context right? I see people shaking their heads. But if you're analyzing specifically academic writing, then you get adjectives that not only, they might have the same meaning or not, but that fit that register specifically or that genre. Okay, the last word, it's word lists. And word lists are not really a corpus tool or functionality. They are mainly a corpus product. So a word list is a list of all the words in a text or in a corpus, together with the frequency of these words. So several word lists have been created to represent specific discourse domains, like the academic word list. If you teach ESL, all textbooks nowadays have a stamp that says, with words from the academic word list, of the academic vocabulary list, things like that. There is the nursing word list if you're teaching, English for nurses, business word list if you're teaching ESP. Lots of different lists are available. Researchers have created tools for us to analyze our own students' texts using this word list. So this is the complete lexical tutor. And if you put like an excerpt of a text here, everything that shows up in yellow are the academic words. So whatever is in blue are the most frequent words in English. Green are the second 1,000 most frequent words in English. And then red are words that are off, so they're not in any of these lists. So something like this could be used, for example, if I'm asking students to create a text that it's a blog post. Because, for example, with blog post, do we want it to be more academic or less academic? Less academic. So maybe I can, and students can be like writing something very formally, so I can ask them to put their text here and kind of like reduce the number of academic words that they have. I could also use word and phrase, which is available on Coca. And this one doesn't tell you how many words are academic, but it tells you how students are using the most frequent words in English. And then word and phrase is located in a weird place on Coca, so this is where you have to click to get to word and phrase. And then you get this screen and you just paste your students' text here. But my favorite one right now is Voyant Tools, because you can paste any of your students' text there and it will transform that into a corpus. So all these different words that I said before, like concordance line, collocations, you can get all of that from the Voyant Tools with your students' texts. So this is what I'm going to show you. So here I have a student text that it's about climate change. This is actually written by a student in Brazil. Hey, go Brazil. Hey, Brazil, exactly. So here, but you can see that a lot of it was, it has a lot of repetition of energy. Of course, it relates to the topic, but also shows that like students not trying different words. So I can ask the student to add their text to Voyant Tools, and this is exactly how the interface looks like. And it's going to give all of this to you. It's a lot of information. It gives you the concordance lines here, so you can see how energy is used in different sentences. It gives you the word list there. It gives you a word cloud. Some people like word clouds. It gives you the total of like how many words are there. It gives you like a brief perspective. The way I would use this in the classroom is ask students based on the frequency that appears. Oops, I passed. Go more. You see this part here up there? It shows the frequency of the word. So the first word there is energy, appears 12 times. Then earth appears 7 times. So I would ask students first what words and phrases are the most frequent in their text. And here there's not a lot. The text was very short. The text was like 250 words. So for climate change to appear 3 times, okay. But for energy to appear 12 times in such a short text, maybe not. And this really depends on like what are the goals of your class, right? I'm not saying that I would kill all the students who use energy 12 times in a 250-word text. But then I would ask them to look at the concordance lines of energy, which is available there, and ask them, like, can you find other words that, you know, you could paraphrase the sentence here? So this is really helpful for us to notice. So yeah, these questions aim to draw students' attention to their word choices. There is just one other functionality I would like to bring to your attention. How am I doing time? Okay. According to my time, I still have 20 minutes. Are we? Yeah? Okay. So there is this tool called charts on Coca that you can do fun stuff with. So these are frequency charts that you can use to highlight how a word is used in different text types, like genres or registers, and show lexical change across time. So here I search for old school. What do you notice? It wasn't used that much in the olden days, right? Like in 1990, 95, 1999, there was nothing old school. I mean, shouldn't the 70s be old here, you know? Something like that. But it's actually way more frequent from 2010 to 2014. But if you notice here, like 2015 to 2019, it's actually, maybe it's decreasing. We have to wait next year. There's going to be a new bar here because it's going to be the 4-year span. So I'm curious to see if it's really like decreasing or if it's going to increase again. So we can use something like this to show, you know, that a word. Another thing that we're very curious for is coronavirus. Imagine doing this with the word coronavirus. But the other way that you can use this is it can show different registers. So you have here blog, web, TV, like the Kardashians again, TV or movie, spoken text. This could be like podcasts, fiction, like books that you read, magazines, news, and academic. So here I have two words. What's the first one? What's the second one? Where does adolescent occur? Mainly in academic writing, right? While teenager appears in almost all the other contexts. So we can see how, even though they are similar words, there is a selection of context here. So we can use this for teaching. So how can I use the charts function for teaching? So one thing that we can do, this is my third example that I decided to move here. Let's say I have a student who is writing about legislation, and they write, in 4 states with a substantial minority of Spanish speakers, the legislature turned down the official English bills that were introduced. Turn down is not, it makes sense, right? But the question is, do we actually use multi-word verbs or phrasal verbs in academic writing? So if I look here, I can see that turn down is not that frequent in academic writing, but way more frequent in other types of texts. So what I could ask students to do is first really, throw the question to the group. Ask them, are phrasal verbs like point out, look at, turn down, more frequent in academic writing or spoken registers? And we can see what is the student intuition about it. One thing that is cool about corpus is that we can test our intuitions versus what the real data shows. And then I would ask them to look at their drafts or like other assignments that they wrote for my class and compile a list of all the phrasal verbs or multi-word verbs that they used in their previous writing. And then I'll ask them to use this list to search for their verbs on COCA. Like, for example, I know my writing. I am talking about this, but I also know where are my flaws. So I love point out. So this is something that I have to do for myself. So I would ask them in which type of text are these verbs more frequently used. And here's an example with point out. You can see that, it does appear in academic writing. This is probably just me. But it's way more frequent in spoken English or in blogs. I'm not totally wrong. This is what I'm going to say. Okay, I have the time. So there's more things that I want to show you. So we cover, you don't have corpus training, now you do. Now we learn a lot of different words. Now, teachers don't know about the availability of useful corpus too. But there are lots of online corpora and corpus tools that you could use. And again, there will be a Padlet at the end with lots of links. You'll be overwhelmed with links. But I just want to show that there's Lingo, Scale, CorpusMate, Just the Word, and NetSpeak. So recently, actually this Thursday, Katie's class did a comparison of all these tools, and they found out that Scale and CorpusMate are the best ones. So I'm just going to show you those two, okay? Okay, this is my alarm for 45 minutes. So Scale, what it can do is first find collocations, but they call that word sketch. Why do they have a different names? Because it shows part of speech too. So here I search for the noun study, and it gives me verbs that go with study as a subject, verbs that go with study as an object. So conduct a study, publish a study, undertake a study, commission a study, and so on. It also has concordance lines, so lots of different examples. And Scale is supposed to be clean, a clean version. It has synonyms, and then we have CorpusMate. So CorpusMate is pretty recent, but it's very cool. It has different, you can get concordance lines. You can get distribution by topic. So let's say here, search for the same word, so it's study, and it's more frequent in society, culture, education, and so on. And you can also get collocations there. So these are the tools that I will show to you here today, but again, more links coming. Now, the other thing, which is true, is that corpus analysis is a complex and time-consuming task, which I already said, it's very true, because you have to do a bit of language analysis to create your task, right? But there's people thinking about this. I wanted to highlight these 4 books. So one is by Randy Rappin, Using Corpora in the Language Classroom. And this book is super thin. You can probably find it for $10 on Amazon. And it has an explanation to the teachers of all the things I just said here, and also some ideas of activities. Then the Free Now book might be a little bit longer. It talks about corpus, but the thing that it's cool here is that it has snippets from teachers who tried to use corpus in their classrooms. So they say what was a challenge for them and what wasn't. Okay, now maybe my favorite is this one by Vander. So Vander has this book. It has 72 chapters. You might imagine, wow, I have to read 72 chapters. but each chapter is like 3 pages with a lesson plan. Let's say you got hit in the head, you have a concussion, you have to enter the classroom, and you have to do a DDL activity. You can just open this and, pick the activity and implement that right now. So this book, really worth it. I like it. This one is similar to the Randy book, so it's using corpora in the language learning classroom. Again, it's a bit of explanation and some tasks. Now, this book is pretty cool, right? It has like lesson plans. So some people have been thinking about this too, like lesson plans for DDL. But this one you have to buy on Amazon, whatever. I still recommend it. I think it's pretty cool. But some people have created resources that are very similar to that, but online. So have you heard of Pressbook? I call this Pressbook is the blog of the future, basically. So it's a free website where we are hosting different resources for language teachers. So this one is one that I'm a part of. We have, I think, like 17 tasks. Katie is also a part of it. There's like 17 tests for teachers, like how to use corpus in this context. This one is pretty cool. It's by Queensland University in Australia, and it has tasks for English, Portuguese, and Spanish, so different variety. This one also has YouTube videos explaining step by step how to do DDL in the classroom. This one is cool. Does anybody here teach like primary or secondary level? This one has tasks thinking about primary and secondary level of teaching. So it's pretty cool. Oh, here I have like some examples of the tasks that we have in the book that I edited. So you can see here like, what is the difference between have and be? Do I have a problem or a trouble? Comparing synonyms with COCA. These are cool examples. Maybe this is not exactly the problem or the issue you have in your classroom, but you could, change the lesson plan for whatever you're having issues in your classroom. And this is the one that has primary, so like lesson ideas for primary and lower secondary school, lessons ideas for upper secondary school, and others. Okay, so my take-home message is things that you should consider or reasons why you should do DDL. Authenticity, right? Corpora allows students to explore language in context. Autonomy, like students can answer their own language questions. Specificity, teachers can use corpora that reflect the type of discourse or disciplinary practices that students want to produce. Now I know, there's like 5 presentations, maybe more, about ChatGPT today. I know, I looked at the program. So, I did a corpus analysis. So you might be thinking like, can generative AI do all these things that you're talking about? These are my initial thoughts about this, okay? Or initial thoughts of everybody doing DDL in corpus. There is a couple of things that DDL might be more appropriate than generative AI. Like for example, for domain-specific representation. So when we try to give students like, hey, ask ChatGPT examples of the use of the word nonetheless or notwithstanding, we actually don't know what register or what genre these examples come from. While with DDL, the teacher has control. You can say like, I want examples of notwithstanding in academic writing, or I want examples of this expression in spoken. I want examples of point out in spoken versus academic writing. So you have control of the discourse domain that you're representing to your students, while that's not possible yet with ChatGPT or other generative AIs. You also have control of like register versus genre variation. So generative AI is less attuned to register variation in student writing than students, and possibly other types of writing too. This means that if you ask a student to write an essay versus a lab report, the student can use different linguistic structures, lexical-grammatical features to do that. ChatGPT ends up combining all of it. It has the same type of writing over and over. And this is a study that I've been conducting and other people have been conducting too. Authenticity. So there is a significant difference between human versus machine writing. This was already proven in the Berber Sardinha paper 2024. I feel like I'm quoting a lot of Brazilians here.
Brazilians, I love it.
Yeah, I'm like, it's not that I'm promoting my people, but it's just that we've been really interested in that. Also, this Goulart et al. Study that is under review also shows that specifically in undergraduate student writing, there's a lot of difference to what students are doing versus what ChatGPT can do. If we give the same prompt to a student and to ChatGPT, the result is very different. developing autonomy, right? It is unclear whether generative AI promotes learner discovery. I'm not saying that we should burn ChatGPT, not at all. There are things that like come together, like it's easier to interact with ChatGPT, so maybe we could ask it to create like concordance lines, and you can ask ChatGPT to create concordance lines from a given website, for example. It also simplification of text like for different levels. Let's say you do want to use a text, but you want to simplify it to, basic English, elementary, so you could do that too. I promised a Padlet, right? So this is the Padlet that has all the websites I mentioned and more. This is the link, and this is also the QR code. If you ever try DDL in your classroom, I would love if you could add to the Padlet too. The Padlet is there forever, basically. So if you try something in your classroom, yeah, let me know. And then, okay, I'll give you a second while I drink my tea. There was also a website in the beginning and at the end of this presentation that is Coral Corpus Lab. This is my lab, and probably I'll post the slides there after this. So this is my message. We want you to join the Corpus revolution. And I told you my presentation was all backwards, so I have a bit of a reversed Q&A. Can I do that, Brittany? So can you see yourself adapting some of these activities or tests to use in your own classroom? And how much training do you think that your students will need before they can use Corpus in the classroom? This is my questions to you people. And then you can ask questions for me too. Oh, that's a great question. Because, Coca has a free version, but what happens is you can do, I think, 20 searches, then you have to pause for 5 minutes, then do 20 searches again. That's free. Yeah. If you pay, then you can do as many searches as you want without stopping. Yeah. Yes, I can barely see you because of the light. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Kind of like your IP address. Yeah. That's why I showed, Andy, should I be giving microphones to people? Okay. So yeah, this is a problem that occurs with Coca, is that if all the students, and we have a paid version, and this happens in our classroom too. If all the students are trying the same search at the same time, Coca will be like, I don't like this. So that's why I showed all these other websites. Like, for example, CorpusMate has been working greatly. And it's way more because it's not such a big website, the developers are more accessible. Like, you can email them and say, hey, I encountered this problem, and the turnaround's very fast. Yeah, and it's free. There's no registration because Coca also asks for you to register, which is another problem. Yeah. Go ahead, Sandra. Yeah.
Goodness, now I'm going to be shy. So my university pays for students to use Coca, but we do find that getting them all registered, it just eats up so much class time. I'm trying to get them in, and so I'm really excited to learn about these other tools, so thank you. My question about some of them is a concern that we have about using AI, and that you're basically giving your intellectual property over to a bot of some kind, and so do you know with some of these online corpora if there are any protections for people's intellectual property or writing or whatever they're working on?
Oh,
Thanks.
That's a great question. I have lots of answers to Sandra's question. So the first, that wasn't a question, but I'm going to answer that too, is that it takes a lot of class time to have students register in class for Coca. So there is a couple of video tutorials, and in one of the press books I showed, there is a tutorial of how to register for Coca, written picture with picture, picture by picture, screenshots. I always send that to students and say, next class, you need to be registered already, as a homework. I know that they not always do that, but at least there is a step-by-step for them to do. Then about the use of, intellectual property, a lot of the searches you do on a corpus is way more just one word rather than your whole text. I think that this would apply specifically for tools that are like Coca with word and phrase, or the Complete Lex Tutor where you paste your whole text, and the Voyant tools. And I know that all of them have very specific guidelines saying that like they won't store your text. Like you can even, for Voyant tools, you can download like the code and run on your computer without internet. So it's definitely not being stored, you know, in any of their servers or anything, because that's a real concern. Yeah. Hi.
On the Lex Tutor measure you were showing earlier, if I'm trying to count the number of sophisticated words, should I just take whatever's 3,000 or above? Is that what
Oh, so do you mean,
recommend?
Can I go back to that slide? Let's see.
Yes, please.
Let's see if I, yeah. Oh, it's not, luckily it's not the last
Sorry to bring
one.
you all the way there.
No, it's okay. We're almost there. I think we're like 5 slides away. Yeah, okay. So this is Lex Tutor, right? And it gives you, so this in blue here, this count here, is the 1,000 most frequent words in English. And you don't have to give it, like this list exists in the tool. Then these are the second 1,000 most frequent words in English. And these are the academic words. So not really like sophisticated words, it depends on what you define by that. And then these are academic words. And it gives you like the percentage. I'm pretty sure that in a screen above this, it also gives you the raw count. Like if you want to know there is 200 academic words, it will give you that too.
Thank you. So if I understand correctly, is it the yellow and the red ones that are the more advanced or more academic?
Yeah, so yellow means academic, and red, I'm not mic'd right. Yeah, okay. But the red are like technical words.
Thank you.
Yeah. I can't see your name, sorry. Oh, I think we're holding on for a second. Yeah. Let's wait for Andy to authorize.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. So I have a question. So since a lot of people here agree that it can be time consuming, so you've done this so much, and so I would like to know, how do you decide when to use this and what exactly for to use this in your classroom? Because as you said, it can be time consuming to train your students to do this, right? Creating those passages like the ones that you showed, apostrophe S versus the off construction, well, like can be time consuming. So how do you decide when to actually...
What's your name again?
Sergey.
Sergey. Hi, Sergey. So we're all going to make an agreement here, okay? Which is, it is time consuming. But I think that once you start doing it, it becomes more automatic. You know, it's like riding a bike. With practice, you get better at it. So here is our agreement. I think that if we're trying this, one way that we could do is get, you know, I showed all these like press books that have tasks. Maybe try for this semester, there's still 10, 11 weeks. Try one of those tasks that are already developed. You don't have to do anything, just implement it in your classroom, one of them. See how it goes, see how students react to it. Then next semester, you can try 2. And then it's going to be, you know, you'll be like more aware of how it goes and so on. So this is a way that you can like slowly introduce corpus, because if you are the only teacher or the only instructor introducing corpus in your classroom, it's going to become something that the students will say, oh, this is the teacher who uses corpus. And then if you only do that in your classroom, you will definitely become the corpus instructor, you know? So I would say select something maybe that you find will be interesting for students to notice the pattern rather than get the rule. Like for example, delicious versus tasty, right? Select something in your class that is already part of your content, or try one of the tests that are already there so you don't have to develop something totally new. And as you're doing this, I'm sure you are going to get more ideas and you will want to explore more the use of corpus, because it is time consuming. And I think one of the ways that we can, you know, deal with that is try not to use Coca that much and use these other tools that don't need registration, because I can go to Scale or to CorpusMate straight away. I don't need registration. It's just like one search and it's done. Students even like, so for CorpusMate, students like that they can do it on their phones, for example. So it's very useful. It is also a way to avoid students being on their phones the whole time in class. Yeah. Bavi.
So I just wanted to ask you,
Passing.
if we want to be quick and dirty, can we use Google? Okay, if we want to be quick and dirty, can we use Google and just say how to use nonetheless in a sentence? Or yeah. So Google as a corpus.
Yeah, I see where yeah, so you can, and I think, so there are like advantages and disadvantages to that, right? you could definitely, if you're just searching for examples of nonetheless, one of the examples I have that I use sometimes is that like if you want to use Google as a corpus, you can use, you know that you can use asterisk and then Google will fill in the blank for you. So let's say the 3 asterisk characteristics. So it could be the 3 main, the 3 basic, etc. So you definitely can use Google to get several different synonyms or things that will go there. And that's a way to use Google as a corpus. My concern would be, or something that we have to be aware when doing that, is that we cannot vet like what's on Google, right? So we don't know if these are good examples of language and what type of discourse they're representing. Is this really academic English? Is this the type of English that I'm trying to teach? But I would say that if we want like a fast way, definitely, yeah. Thank you, yeah. Hi. Oh, I'm counting on the 2 of you to know the time now, okay? Yeah. Yeah.
Are there any like corpus search tools that can help us like sort through, say, like YouTube transcripts or song lyrics to find like specific words or forms that we can use as authentic materials for our students in the classroom?
So for lyrics, I'm not sure, but have you heard of Youglish? Yeah, so that's kind of like a corpus of YouTube videos. I always use that when I teaching sociolinguistics. I think there's a corpus of TED Talks too. So it's like all the videos from TED Talks. It's like the TED, one of the links in the Padlet is the corpus of TED Talks. So these are the 2 ones that come to my mind like straight away. I'm not sure if there's any corpus of like lyrics, but you know, give that idea to somebody. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi. That's okay. Yeah.
What are some of the caveats you have encountered after using data analysis?
Time, right?
Time
to
consuming.
find the patterns, like specifically if you are stuck on something that you want to teach. Maybe, like examples of like taboo topics that you cannot delete from the corpus, or maybe not taboo topics, but things that okay, let me start over. Sometimes there are curse words that you, like depending on the level of your student, you don't really want to address that. You know, if you're teaching like adults, maybe that'll be fine, but like elementary, that's, some of the problems, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
Maybe it builds on that. Having worked with corpus before, corpora with students, occasionally it'll give you data that's like hard to grasp why it gave you that data. For example, in the Lex Tutor example, I think the red words were technical, but it marked Brazil as technical.
I know.
And so, students always like ask, like, why is that one? It's like, you know, focusing on one detail rather than the big picture. So I'm just curious, how do you respond to the, you know, stuff that's hard to understand or the exceptions or whatever?
Oh, I have several answers to that. First, it will give Brazil as a technical word because basically all the red words are words out of any list. So it's not necessarily technical, it's just that they are usually more technical, right? So they are not the most frequent words in English and they're not academic either. Okay, so that's the problem there. Then I would say this, again, step by step. So the first step I would do when using corpus in the classroom would be to select the sentences, you know, do a little bit of a filter first. And several tools like Coca allows that, or you can also print the ones, you know, like, for example, with my example of apostrophe S and of, I did some cleaning of the data before because I didn't want to have some exceptions to the rule initially. Now, when I do get students, so, you know, building up stuff, scaffolding here, when I do get students to work with the corpus and they find examples of maybe the rule not being applied or, you know, some weird sentences, I actually talk about this, like, why do you think this is happening? And, you know, we have, the whole point of corpus is to actually talk about what is the typical use of language. So if you have one example of something and 100 examples of something else, this is exactly what we're talking about in terms of typical use of language, right? And I want to bring students' attention to that, see, like, this person used language like this, and they're still published somewhere. So it's not the end of the world if you make one mistake or something like that. Yeah, I actually think it's good to build confidence. Do we have more questions?